If you've been interested in Bigfoot for a long time, you've probably, at the very least, heard of something called the Patty film. It is, in my opinion at least, the best evidence of Bigfoot that has been captured on camera. But you might not know the story behind how the Sasquatch got its film debut, funnily enough, in the land of Hollywood. So the name Patty film comes from the name of one of the two men responsible for recording the footage, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. Patterson initially heard of Sasquatch after reading an article about the creature in 1959. He would spend the next few years researching, spending vast amounts of his own time and money in search of the American ape man, only to fail to discover any conclusive evidence. 7 years after learning about the creature, in 1966, he self-published a book on the topic titled Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist? Patterson used the revenue generated from this to fund future expeditions. Then, in spring of 1967, Patterson decided to try something new with his fascination, filming a pseudo-documentary about cowboys on the trail of Bigfoot. He recruited 9 of his buddies, including Bob Gimlin and Bob Hieronymus, for 3 days of shooting. He spent a few months planning, raising funds, and gathering supplies for the film. In October of that same year, Patterson and Gimlin set out to Six Rivers National Forest in California. Patterson chose this location for filming because he thought that the Bigfoot sightings that had been reported in the area over the years would lend some authenticity to his film. At the time, Gimlin did not believe in the existence of Bigfoot, but humored Patterson by saying he wouldn't shoot one should they come across it. Then the day came, Friday, October 20th, 1967. The duo was riding on horseback in the Bluff Creek area. Sometime around 1:30 p.m., they came across an overturned tree on the opposite side of the creek and saw something that would come to define their entire lives. They spotted a figure standing behind it, that Patterson placed at standing between 6.5 and 7 feet tall, although later he would increase this number to 7.5, and various estimates have been put out over the years, all of them peg Patty at certainly tall enough to play center. Patterson claimed that at their closest they were 25 feet from the creature, and that his horse reared upon realizing what it had come across. He dismounted, pulled the camera out of his bag, and yelled at Gimlin to draw his firearm, seemingly welching on their previous agreement. Patterson chased after the entity, followed by Gimlin on horseback, who has stated he never directly pointed his weapon at Patty. Patterson filmed the creature from less than 100 feet away, with her turning over to look at the two men with a look that Patterson described as disgust. He filmed it until the reel ran out. Gimlin chased after it, but was called back by Patterson, afraid of what might happen if he were left alone in a Sasquatch-occupied area. They measured the distance between the tracks it had left and took some plaster casts before departing. After getting the film developed, they contacted scientist Lee Abbott about an investigation, with Abbott ultimately declining. As soon as the film was developed, Patterson attempted to spread the word as much as possible, but only a few reputable scientists were interested in the footage, none of which were willing to give either man a definitive yes on its authenticity. However, Patterson was able to find commercial interest in the film, selling the rights to different networks for various television specials and to local film houses. He was actually arrested in the weeks following his return from Bluff Creek for holding on to the rented camera past the stipulated date, but was released upon returning it in mint condition. He stayed an avid researcher of the American ape man until his death in 1972. A few days before his passing, he stated that in hindsight, he and Gimlin should have simply shot the creature so they would have been able to retrieve a physical specimen. There is an urban legend floating around that on his deathbed, he claimed that Patty was not a real creature, but rather a man in a suit. However, I've been completely unable to find any sources for these claims, despite how eager some people in my comment section have been to spread them. This story is likely just conflated with the fact that on his deathbed, Patterson did admit to Gimlin that when he appeared at various conventions, he brought along a man who claimed to be Bob due to Gimlin's desire to avoid the attention associated with the film, as well as reconciling him over Patterson's cheating Gimlin out of the profits. Various men over the years have claimed to have been what was filmed in the footage, including Bob Hieronymus himself, but none have ever produced conclusive evidence that that was the case, or been able to replicate what was shown in the video. As for my thoughts on the footage, there is no doubt in my mind that it is the genuine article. Simply put, the costuming technology that would be required for it to have been a hoax did not exist at the time. The limb proportions for the knees to be able to bend, as well as the elbows and the stride lengths, would be impossible for a human in a suit. In addition, the muscle movement isn't something that could have been done by a costume. Patterson showed the film to various Disney studio executives and special effects artists whose answers about whether it's real or not have ranged from they could not have created it themselves at all, or that they might have been able to in a studio under the right conditions, but certainly not in the forests of Northern California. 2 years later, the film Planet of the Apes would win the Oscar for Best Costume, and the difference between what's shown in the Patterson-Gimlin film and the costumes in the movie is night and day. Gimlin himself has stated to this day that what's in the footage is real. If it were somehow a hoax, he certainly wasn't in on it. So what do you think? Do you believe Patterson and Gimlin captured the ferocious furball on film that day? Let me know in the comments section below.